It is 10:01. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The NCAA tournament field of 68 is set. Tennessee is the 2 seed in the Midwest region. The Vols take on Wofford on Thursday. A win would move them into the second round to face either UCLA or Utah State. 2 other mid-state teams are in. Vanderbilt, the 10 seed in the East. They face St. Mary's on Friday, and Lipscomb, the 14 seed in the South, as the A-Sun champions. They play Iowa State on Friday. In the women's tournament, the Lady Vols, a 5 seed, taking on South Florida on Friday. Vanderbilt, a 7 seed. They will play Oregon Friday afternoon. The Tennessee Titans released veteran cornerback Chido Awuzie over the weekend. The 29-year-old played in 8 games last season. And another NFL news, the Bengals have paid their wide receiver duo, Jamar Chase, getting 4 years, $161 million, $112 million guaranteed. He is the highest paid non-QB in NFL history. And T. Higgins gets 4 years, $115 million, with the first 2 years guaranteed. The Texans are giving cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. a 3-year, $90 million extension, $89 million in guaranteed money. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Selection Sunday in the books. We got a bracket, and we are excited to dive into some college basketball this morning. Happy to have you here, Bert, Lucas, and me, until 1 o'clock. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. F&M Bank chat available for you if you want to interact on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Not the result that the Vols wanted yesterday in the SEC tournament championship game, Florida outlasting them there, but not the worst thing in the world, given the logistics of how the bracket played out. And now with the field set, I think Vols fans probably feeling pretty good about their draw. You've got Auburn, Duke, Houston, and Florida as the number 1 seeds in the bracket for the men. And the SEC, is it a competition to see how many teams can get in? Greg Sankey probably feels that it is. But yes. 14 of the 16 SEC basketball programs making the men's field. Big 10 next with 8, the Big 12 with 7. It does just, in fact, mean more.
Shatters the previous record, which was held by the Big East with 11. Shatters that record. We went into the SEC tournament talking about it like, could this actually, some things would have to happen, but there is this crazy scenario where 14 teams get in, and they do indeed get in, and the SEC got some very favorable seeding as well, I thought. Like Ole Miss, Vanderbilt. I think, some teams getting some favorable matchups going into this tournament. And I think you're right. I think Tennessee fans are okay with getting Wofford and then either UCLA or Utah State, assuming you avoid an upset, and then that potential Kentucky rematch in the Sweet 16. Also, to land in Lexington is a very positive development for Tennessee fans, because that is, an hour, a little over an hour from Knoxville. So they will be out in full force on Friday night.
Robert informed me that he doesn't do brackets, and then he made it a dumb braces joke, and I wanted to strangle him. You're not going to ruin March Madness for me. You're going to fill out a bracket on this damn show.
Why would that matter to you? Why would my participation ever matter? In fact, most of the times you ask me not to participate, but now you would like for me to have a bracket so you can what? Poke holes in it?
No.
So you can say, oh, Robert didn't pick San Diego State to upset UNC. Oh, he should have known that Missouri didn't have enough teens on their team to unseat Drake. Like, what do you want me to say in my bracket?
Why are you pushing back on the one time that I am actively inviting your participation?
Because I'm a cat, dude. I don't now. Oh, you want me now? I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here. I'm just going to make a mockery of it.
I don't care. You're going to do it anyway.
There are other brackets. In fact,
even if I have to grab your hand and fill out the bracket for you in red ink, you're filling out a damn bracket on this show.
You could fill out a faux bracket for me if you would like.
Just write his name on it.
Yeah, there you go. What do you want me to do? What would
want participation.
You want me to fill out a bracket?
Yes.
Okay, I'll fill out a bracket.
Okay.
You got it.
I don't care what it looks like. I don't care.
mockery.
Yeah, I'm sure. That should be a pretense that you will not care what is on my bracket.
I don't care in the slightest. I care that you do it.
Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
Very good.
I'm going to cross out every team's name and make them Pokemon, but that's okay. It doesn't matter to me.
That's fine. That would be with as much seriousness as most people give their brackets. You don't have to take these things super scientifically. Hell, half of the people participating in ESPN's bracket challenge or the CBS Sports, or I'm sure Yahoo does one too, they're probably letting AI fill out their brackets. Like, let's just do it, okay? It's going to be all right. You don't have to use ChatGPT. You don't have to make them into Pokemon. Just do it.
You're going to hate my participation.
Not any more than I usually do.
That'd be an interesting experiment. Just get ChatGPT to fill out your entire bracket, see how it goes.
There's no way that half of America is not using AI to try and win their bracket challenge. There's just no, for as much laziness as AI is going to bring on, you will not convince me that people are not allowing artificial intelligence to just take the wheel.
So the story, though, is about North Carolina. That has dominated every conversation about the field of 68 in this year's NCAA tournament.
It was fun watching the North Carolina Duke game with Robert on Friday because I had no idea his visceral hatred for the University of North Carolina. It was delightful to me. Duke hands them 3 straight L's this season and goes on to win the ACC championship pretty comfortably without their 2 best players. And, of course, one of them, Cooper Flagg, who's expected to be available for the NCAA tournament. But the thing that makes North Carolina getting in the tournament a story is, one, they lost to all of the good teams on their schedule. You go down and look.
1-12 versus quad 1 teams this season.
It's offensive. And the thing that adds insult to injury is the fact that their athletic director, Bubba Cunningham, is up there acting like, oh, me being the lead voice for the NCAA tournament selection committee? You think that has any bearing on the fact that North Carolina, with one of the worst resumes you've ever seen make the field, do you think that had anything to do with it? Of course not. I wasn't even in the room. Don't be ridiculous. If I actually cared to see Indiana basketball prolong their season and they missed out for this North Carolina team, I would be seething with rage today. But I'm not, because I'm happy Indiana's season's over and that Mike Woodson will ride off into the sun.
So it has come to a merciful end for you.
I can enjoy basketball now because my team is done and they will not play in the Crown or the NIT or any of the rest of this crap.
There you go.
Okay, just filled my bracket out. I got AI to do it. It says the number 1 seed in the East will cut down the Nets and win the national championship. It just did the whole bracket for me. So
Did you actually do it that quickly?
Yeah, well, I didn't do it. AI did it that quickly.
What is your reticence for the bracket? I don't understand.
Because I don't know. I just like watching the game.
There are so many other things that, that's fine. You don't have to actually care about what's on the piece of paper. You just have to fill out the piece of paper.
Congrats to Duke, I guess.
Yeah, Duke is going to, according to them, I'll have to go through this and fill it out to see actually, because I don't know seeds based on regions. And that's what it noted. It was like, March Madness is highly variable, so I don't know teams to denote to these, but I will give you a seeding breakdown. So it broke down all the seedings for me.
How funny is that? For Tennessee, we'll talk about the ceiling relative to expectation. I thought Slay was good. Was that last week or the week before that he was on with us, where he's talking about
both?
Oh, that's right. In the last couple of weeks, where he's been talking a lot about Rick Barnes and just what expectations should be versus the reality of the NCAA tournament and how difficult it is to do what Tennessee's program has been able to do over a sustained period of time. Now, again, Florida may well be the best team in the country. Even when Cooper Flagg comes back to Duke, whenever Cooper Flagg comes back to Duke, because I was at Bridgestone Arena yesterday, and that Florida team, you're praying that they miss.
They're just relentless. I mean,
they are relentless. They have size. They have physicality. They are as complete a basketball team as I think exists in the field. And I did pick them to win the NCAA tournament.
Oh, you've already filled out your bracket.
Oh, yeah. This is my favorite time of year.
I'm with you, man.
I'm so excited.
I love this time of year. I love filling out the bracket, but I like to give it a couple days to let the bracket marinate before I start to jot down team. I also like to give myself as little time as possible to second guess and go back and change picks because I am awful about that.
Will you write it in pencil and then change picks? Have you done that in the past, or will you just print out another bracket?
Typically, I'm doing it digitally, and at any point, I can go into my ESPN app and say, actually, you know what? No, I'm not feeling good about that McNeese State pick. No, McNeese State's not going to win. And then I'll go back and I'll change it again. I'm awful at that. Every year I tell myself I'm going to go with my first instinct. And every year I second guess and third guess and fourth guess. So I'm going to fill out my bracket on like Wednesday or when the first four is done. So I will know whether or not it'll be North Carolina or San Diego State taking on Ole Miss in the South region.
I'm picking against North Carolina no matter what.
To your point about Auburn, they've lost 3 of 4 to close out the season.
Mm-hmm.
No team in NCAA tournament history has ever lost 3 of their last 4 and won the national championship.
You're like that show, The League. You're tinkering with your roster.
I am
the
a
way
tinkerer.
That, Rodney Ruxin tinkers, a toilet tinkerer. I just imagine Lucas going through his ESPN app, tinkering ceaselessly with his bracket selections. 615-737-1045 is the number if you would like to participate. Speaking of brackets, Bracket Madness is at King's Dining and Entertainment. You can join 3HL at King's Dining and Entertainment in Franklin tomorrow, Tuesday, March the 18th, starting at 3 p.m. for the ultimate basketball watch party featuring a live broadcast from 3HL. You can purchase a $10 buffet ticket to get unlimited appetizers and a drink ticket while you enjoy the games. For more information, visit 1045thezone.com today. Let's start with Rob.
Hey.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good.
Just making a mention at the top of the hour, it was stated that 3 teams from the state of Tennessee are in the bracket. I do believe that's incorrect. Being a Memphis Tiger fan, it seems like we're always left out. Memphis Tigers is in the NCAA.
You can call Lucas an idiot if you would like,
Yes.
Rob. Or we have sound to that effect. If
We do
can-
have sound.
Because that's the second time.
But that sound is not necessary here because I said mid-state teams.
Oh,
No. Now, to my knowledge, Memphis is not in the mid-state.
Boo. Rob, you get to decide whether whether we'll allow that or not.
Wait a minute now. Is the Tennessee Volunteers in the mid-state?
I said 2 other, after the Tennessee mention, I said 2 mid-state teams
He's backpedaling.
in Vandy and Lipscomb. But you are right. Memphis is in the tournament. That
Got
is
him
one
on
of
his
4
heels.
Tennessee teams. And
Yep.
I will concede, Rob, Memphis is not in the mid-state, but they are in the tournament. And Memphis is a dangerous team in this tournament. Now, they have a tough matchup. Colorado State's one of the hottest teams in the country. And everybody loves a good 12-5 upset pick. Memphis, the 5 seed in the West. But if they can avoid the upset, they'll play either Maryland or Grand Canyon. So I really like Memphis's potential path to the second weekend. Memphis hasn't been to the second weekend since Cal was there.
That's crazy.
It's been a long time.
Crazy.
But they've got the goods to do it this year.
So we'll circle back to bracket talk. We've got Belmont coach Casey Alexander, our annual tournament analyst, will join us, and we will go through the regions with Casey. Steve Lehman of News Channel 5, also a basketball aficionado. We were talking some hoops while we took in the SEC championship game yesterday at Bridgestone Arena. Lehman will join us at 12:20 today. But there's a lot of news in the NFL, including a Titans transaction that happened on Saturday afternoon that has some interesting implications. We'll get to all of that coming up next.
It's time for NFL headlines with Lucas Panzica.
I'm going to start timing it. Nobody believes you that you're not just extending the music longer and longer every time we do this segment.
I do it at 20 seconds. It plays for 20 seconds every single time, dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
Keep telling yourself that. There are some big money deals to talk about around the NFL, but quickly, the Titans had one transaction over the weekend, cutting 29-year-old corner Chidobe Awuzie, who played in 8 games for the Titans last season. He missed the sort of front half of the season after picking up an injury in training camp, and they continued down this path of either cutting loose or avoiding players with recent injury history on their roster, and Awuzie is the latest. He is gone.
So it may have some financial implications that make it make more sense than just the, $1.99 million in savings? Because they don't really save money this year.
No, they take on some dead money.
By cutting him. So there is that small degree of savings. And I don't know the exact specificities of his contract. So he may have had an upcoming roster bonus that they didn't want to pay, or just something down the line that they're like, is it worth it? No, not really.
He'll be 30 this summer.
So he wasn't available. He played the first 3 games of the season, Lucas, and then didn't play again until week 14 against Jacksonville.
Oh, he wasn't there at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, he played in the Bears game, the Jets game, and the Packers game.
Okay, so he got hurt in training camp.
Yeah, and then missed basically
a lot of training camp.
I think he missed basically all of training camp.
Came back for the very beginning of the season, got hurt again, missed the meat of the schedule, so to speak.
By the time he got back, the Titans were dead and buried in October, so I guess you could say that was he was. He came back when they were long overdue for a lack of competitiveness, or not competitive at that point in time by the time that he got back. It helps that you have Brownlee, and Brownlee, you'd like him to cut down on the penalties. I think he had 9 individual penalties last year, not ideal. But he's a very physical corner. He's a very aggressive corner. He's somebody who's got, he's L'Jarius Sneed light.
You got more than you thought you would from a rookie out of the 5th round.
And you got more than you thought you would out of Darrell Baker Jr., who they also re-signed.
Yes.
So it's a combination of those things. If they knew they wanted to move on from him anyway, I guess it's just, all right, cut bait. He's one of the ones that we weren't thrilled about in the free agent acquisitions. And again, Lucas, I brought this up before. They signed the corners, and then when they signed the corners, and then again after the corners didn't play, that's such a high-risk position to allot that much money in, and they gave out 2 substantive corner contracts. 3 years, 36 is what Cheeto signed for. He made it 1 year. He made it 8 games and 1 season into that 3-year contract, and the Titans were like, yeah, my bad. That's another one. My bad.
Even still, there are a lot of bodies in that room, and guys that you can feel good about. Roger McCreary, Jarvis Brownlee, like you said, Darrell Baker gave them some good snaps last year. But it does make me wonder how they feel about L'Jarius Sneed. And it's a very interesting kind of... There's an interesting context to this, because obviously Mike Borgonzi was on the Chiefs side of things, and Chad Brinker was who negotiated with Mike Borgonzi on the Sneed trade. And now Mike Borgonzi is the general manager of the Titans. So he's obviously on a big contract. But if they're going to cut Chido Awuzie, who is getting up there in age, he's certainly older than Sneed, not that much older, but he is older. But L'Jarius Sneed missed more games than Chido Awuzie last year.
Played in 5, Sneed.
So it makes you wonder what they think of Sneed going into 2025.
They're still counting on him. They have to. And they can't turn around and be like, well, that was a terrible deal. And then the general manager that they hired is snickering in the background being like, got you guys on the way out the door, because now it's his problem. So in part, his problem. Chet, again, Rand Carthon is going to get, he did get blamed. He did get scapegoated for all the bad deals that the Titans made last year, or any bad deals that the Titans made last year. When in reality, we are learning that Brinker negotiates a good many of these deals. Next.
Big money deals across the NFL, including a new highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. It is Jamar Chase, but the news is not just about Jamar Chase. It's really about the Cincinnati Bengals writ large because they retain both receivers. Jamar Chase signs a 4-year, $161 million deal, $112 million of that in guaranteed money. T. Higgins signs a 4-year, $115 million deal, $57.5 million of that in guaranteed money. Essentially, the first 2 years of the deal fully guaranteed for T. Higgins, and he is making an average annual salary of just over $28 million a year, which is probably right about maybe just under what he would have gotten on the open market, but he'll take that deal to come back to Cincinnati and potentially compete for Super Bowls with Joe Burrow as his quarterback and a stacked roster, at least in terms of the skill position on offense. So Chase and Higgins back in Cincy. And then to layer on top of that, Diana Rossini reported this morning that the Bengals are working to retain Trey Hendrickson, and discussions are ongoing between the two.
So are they just not going to be able to pay any other player and just basically they have a mandate to draft well or else?
I mean, we were talking about it before the show. Obviously, there are ways that you can manipulate things with the cap. You can Sean Payton Saints it and just say, screw it. We're just going to go all in for this next, 4-year window, however long Joe Burrow is going to be an elite quarterback, which is probably going to be longer than 4 years.
How long have the Saints, and I know it was worth it because they won the Super Bowl with Peyton and Breeze, and maybe one ring is enough to deal with, because they've been trying to dig themselves out of that financial situation for how long in New Orleans? Still this year, they're trying to dig themselves out of that.
But it's not very characteristic of the Bengals as an organization. I wonder if there's anything to that, too, that they're trying to buck this trend that they don't like. At every turn, the discussion has been, as Higgins, Chase, Hendrickson are all due. Gesicki wants a new deal. They got their franchise quarterback out there demanding they pay all these guys. And every discussion about them has been, well, they're cheap. They don't pay anybody. Right? I mean, they don't fire coaches.
That's not a good
cheap.
reason to spend all of the money. We'll show them.
Well, no, that's not a good reason. But to retain Jamar Chase, the best receiver in the NFL, Trey Hendrickson, arguably the best pass rusher in the NFL.
Respectfully,
the T. Higgins deal is the thing that surprises me a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that they could cut T. Higgins loose, maybe draft a rookie wide receiver and spend that money elsewhere. But they're going to run it back, just like Joe Burrow wanted them to.
Okay. How are they going to stop anybody? Their defense, besides Trey Hendrickson, who's kind of in a hostage situation, has no good players. One of the other good players on that defense, Jermaine Pratt, wants out. They're just going to, they held Higgins to account on that situation. They franchise tagged him twice. Trey Hendrickson has publicly explained that he wants to, he's deferred blame essentially to the Bengals, be like, I want the Bengals to win a Super Bowl. I don't know what's up, but we're not moving in the right direction as far as my compensation goes. And we've talked about, or we've played some analysis via audio about people saying, well, he's just not quite as freaky an athlete as Myles Garrett, for example, so he shouldn't make $40 million a year. All right, whatever. If we're going to do it based off production, he's the NFL's leading sack getter last year. And he did that. Jamar Chase had the wide receiving triple crown. Joe Burrow put together one of the best quarterback seasons we've ever seen, and none of them made the playoffs because the Bengals defense stunk. So I don't know what, I guess the logic is, well, we'll just keep scoring 40 points a game. And, at some point we'll outlast the rest of these teams because Mahomes is not going to be able to do this. And Lamar is not going to be able to do this, and Josh Allen is not going to be able to do this, but I think they can, and they have better defenses than the Bengals. So for the 4 AFC superpowers, Cincinnati is the most questionable, right? Of the 4 teams that we believe to be year in, year out contenders in this conference because almost exclusively of their quarterback play, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Cincinnati. Cincinnati feels like the most fraudulent's not the right word, but fraught.
Well, 2 of those teams are in the AFC North in Bengals and Ravens. Robert, how do you feel about Cincinnati retaining Higgins, Chase, and potentially Hendrickson?
I like that, similar to the points that Buck has made. I enjoy that they have less money to spend on their defense because the thing that would trouble me with Cincinnati is if they got a lead and they could keep people off of them. That's what I would be concerned with, but that hasn't been the fact. Joe Burrow has to go out there and be Superman every single week to keep them in games with competent opponents. So I enjoy that. I don't enjoy that I want to play Jamar Chase, but we always knew he was going to be there for whether he wanted to or not with the franchise tag. Same thing with T. Higgins. He had at least this year of staying in Cincinnati. So I like that they're extending all this money out, mostly because they're going to have to rely on draft picks and rookies, that was noted in the Jordan Schultz tweet, to keep them along, because they're not going to have the money to spend on guys. So they haven't been exceptional drafters. They haven't been exceptional offensive line developers. So if they want to throw all their cards and push it all in on weapons, that's cool with me. I can play that game.
Yeah, why would Robert be worried about it? They played the Ravens obviously twice last year. Chase had 10 receptions, 193 yards, 2 touchdowns in a 41-38 overtime loss. And then in the second game against the Ravens, he had 11 receptions on 17 targets, 264, and 3 touchdowns, and they still damn lost because you can't stop anybody.
Like 400 yards of receiving.
It's crazy.
Insane. Burrow's numbers also insane in those 2 games in over 2. Yeah, to your point, they need Joe Burrow to be Superman, and he was last year, and they still didn't make the playoffs. So, yeah, they have to draft well at this point. They hold the number 17 pick in the upcoming draft. This is definitely not their line of thinking, but what about a T. Higgins trade at some point down the line to offload that contract? Like, what do you think T. Higgins would have gotten on the open market if they didn't tag him and they just let him hit free agency? What kind of, let's just say AAV? I mean, he's making under $29 million a year in Cincinnati.
I mean, 29 a year feels right for him. What's Ridley, 24? I don't know. He's a wide receiver, too. It's the top of the wide receiver 2 market.
In Cincinnati, he's a wide receiver, too. But the thought
he's
was
not a wide receiver 1.
I disagree. I think T. Higgins would be paid wide receiver 1 money for many teams.
Some team would convince them that he could be their wide receiver 1. So if he came in, if his average a year came in at 29, he would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th highest paid wide receiver. Maybe 8th now, because this has not been updated to reflect Jamar Chase's contract as well. Behind players like Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb, and Justin Jefferson.
That's reasonable to me, though. Like, it's almost like, and I understand that they're different positions, but it's the Dan Moore contract. Dan Moore got the 8th biggest average annual value because he was a left tackle that happened to hit the open market. And I understand T. Higgins significantly better at what he does.
It's a lot closer to being the 8th best receiver than Moore is to being the 8th best left tackle.
Sure, but if you're asking me what they would have gotten out on the open market, it looks like he probably would have gotten about that.
And Johnny makes the point on the F&M Bank chat. T. Higgins also much younger than Calvin Ridley, 26 years old. Does have to prove he can stay healthy for a whole season. But, the Bengals can trade T. Higgins at some point down the line and get rid of that contract, and he'd be making at least close to what he probably would have been making on the open market.
And if we're talking about T. Higgins being a bona fide free agent this offseason, you can't tell me the Patriots wouldn't have backed up the Brinks truck to pay him $32 million a year. They just paid Milton Williams, who hasn't had a full starter share, $26 million. They need a wide receiver. Like, you could not convince me that Mike Vrabel would not have said, yeah, $32 a year, sure, why not?
He's too busy gaslighting Titans fans by trying to trade for A.J. Brown.
But Jamar Chase, deservedly, the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, $161 million over 4 years. How about this?
$70 million a year for 2 wide receivers. It's crazy.
It is crazy. They're in a unique situation, man.
I get it. I mean, it's just, it is insane. Anyway.
This is insane. The Houston Texans are giving 23-year-old corner Derek Stingley Jr. a 3-year, $90 million contract extension.
Jesus.
$30 million a year for Derek Stingley Jr., who deserves this deal. He's an excellent player, had a great season for the Texans last year. Is still insanely young, 23. He'll be 24 this year. He's going into the third year of his career. But the strangest thing about this, Robert and I were talking about it before the show, $90 million deal, $89 million in guaranteed money. What is that?
What?
Yeah, what is that?
I didn't see that.
That was the reporting on it. I'm so confused by this.
No,
I can't.
That can't be right.
It is. You guys didn't see the explanation that came out later in the article, did you? So apparently Derek Stingley is a big fan of exotic reptiles. Apparently around his house he has a bunch of snakes, bearded lizards, all those kind of things. And the $1 million that is not guaranteed would be added to his contract if he were to get rid of all of the venomous snakes and reptiles that are in his house.
That's not real.
Maybe like a PETA thing?
I'm not sure. I don't know what the rules are in Houston.
No,
but Houston,
they're not worried about the animal safety. They're worried about their cornerback safety.
They're worried that he would get bitten by one of these snakes. And Hook, line, and sinker, dude.
Yeah.
Buck will just buy.
You really bought into
Buck
that.
will buy anything off the bargain shelf, dude. I
mean,
swear.
but
A shock on your face.
Ashton Jean tea. Like, you bought it.
No, Derek Stingley Jr. doesn't have exotic reptiles in his house.
Why would that be a surprise? Have you seen the kind of thing that athletes buy? Well, but that's a thing for players like famously Marcus Mariota wasn't allowed to surf while he was under contract.
But the idea that they would withhold
$1 million. I don't know, man.
Like that means anything to.
No, I've got the real reason. I'm sorry for messing with you. So
There's no way that 70% of the audience didn't have the exact same facial expression that I did.
What's the real reason that he's getting 89 guaranteed on a $90 million deal?
It was actually a bookkeeping thing about how he unlike most other Texans players have charitable organizations that they're tied to, and they said that if he would, it's like a tax break thing. If he would start a charity, then he would get that extra $1 million. So they were talking about stings for Stingley because he's allergic to bees. He would help get EpiPens for underprivileged children. It was a lot of other issues. He's not buying this one quite as easily. Stings for Stingley, get EpiPens for those kids.
So
anaphylactic shock.
Stings for Stingley.
It's like watching Jimmy Fallon do an SNL skit, and he can't hold it together. He's supposed to hold it together as opposed to breaking somebody else. It's just him who's falling apart at the seams. That's what it's like watching Robert lie in the microphone.
But seriously, though, it's like that's what we're doing. We're scrambling to try to figure out why only it. Is it simply just to.
I think somebody had a misprint in a tweet. There's no way that doesn't make any
it would have
sense.
said fully guaranteed then. If they wouldn't have said any numbers. They would have just said fully guaranteed.
Do you just not want fully guaranteed out there? I don't know. It's just so weird. It's like the old man in the State Farm commercials that's hanging the dollar at the end of the fishing rod, where he's for that extra $1 million. Oh, you got to be quicker than that. Oh, you want $89 million up front, but you got to earn this $1 million. That last $1 million, Derek. You're going to need about 10 interceptions this year to earn that last $1 million. That's just so weird.
What else you got?
Quickly, the Minnesota Vikings are acquiring running back Jordan Mason. In a trade with the 49ers, they are sending a 2026 six-rounder to San Francisco. Also a pick swap, so San Fran gets pick 160, Minnesota gets pick 187, and Jordan Mason, local product, Gallatin High School, deservedly signs a 2-year, $7 million, this is fully guaranteed, deal with the Vikings. He filled in very nicely when the Niners were down to RB2 with the Christian McCaffrey injury. 12 games played, 789 yards last season, 3 touchdowns, 5.2 yards per carry. So a Middle Tennessee product gets traded to Minnesota and gets paid. So congrats to Jordan Mason. But we do need to talk about the Vikings for another reason.
Who the hell is playing quarterback?
Coming up next, yeah. Aaron Rodgers, of course, fits into the puzzle somehow.
One note quickly, Jordan Mason's contract fully guaranteed because of his work with the Masonic Lodges in Minnesota.
Shut up and go to break. Another offseason cycle of being held hostage by Aaron Rodgers. 3 days after he became a free agent, it's been more than 3 days, I guess, at this point, technically. Now, his free agency got underway at 3 p.m. or was officially active at 3 p.m. on Wednesday of last week. Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback without a team, yet again, rinse and repeat. Do you believe the Minnesota Vikings to be an intelligent organization? A well-run football program?
I believe that.
Then what the hell are they doing flirting around with Aaron Rodgers? Because that is not something that a stable, normal, functional NFL organization would do, in my opinion.
Do you believe the Pittsburgh Steelers to be that?
I do.
Okay, well, they are probably still the betting favorite to land Aaron Rodgers as their starter.
Is there anything that you guys take from this? Like, my only takeaway of, okay, why would Minnesota be interested in Aaron Rodgers? It has to be something with J.J. McCarthy, too. So there's two schools of thought about what the reason could be. It could be that he is not as good as they would hoped he would be at this time, or he is not at where they would like him to be at in his rehab, and this is an insurance policy. That's the way I look at it.
Sure, because the first scenario that you present there, that he's not as good as they would like for him to be, how the hell would they know? He hasn't played.
Sure.
The second, obviously we can't speak to. We're not there in Minnesota covering that story on a day-to-day basis. So that leaves some level of intrigue, some level of speculation to it. But to me, it speaks more loudly about what they thought of Sam Darnold. No, we're good. That's clearly a pumpkin that we made into a carriage for a handful of games in the regular season. And then he showed himself to be what he clearly and obviously is, which is a quarterback with a very, very hard ceiling in the two most important games of the year, and that the risk is worth the reward of 1 year of Aaron Rodgers if he's even remotely close to the person that he used to be. And he is a far cry from the person, or at least when last we saw him, he is a far cry from the quarterback that he used to be. The question to me is more about what he might cost. Is there any world in which Aaron Rodgers, on an average annual basis, makes more money than Sam Darnold does this year? Because I would be stunned if that was the case.
No. And that is a part of this as well. He would be a cheaper option than retaining Sam Darnold.
It's like Pittsburgh taking a flyer on Russ, who, has some level of baggage, but what did he cost him last year? Like vet minimum? 1.125 or something like that? Something insane for a starting quarterback, and I know he wasn't their starting quarterback the entire year, but still, like Russ against the cap was nothing last year. So they said, bleep it. We'll try it, and we'll try Justin Fields, and we'll see if it works. And now there's no strings attached, so they can move on pretty seamlessly from Russell Wilson. But
I mean, I see this working out weirdly because the Bengals are a stable, competent organization.
Minnesota.
Or the Vikings, excuse me.
What is going on with you?
I don't know. No, I have no idea.
What did you do in Cincinnati over the weekend?
Had a nice time. Just walked around.
How much green beer did you drink?
I only had
a bit fuzzy.
I only had one green beer.
Yeah,
also,
he only had 2 beers with us on Friday night.
I had to use the urinal after him, and it looked like green eggs and ham in there. So I don't believe your 2-beer situation.
None of us are wearing green today, by the way. Today actually is St. Patty's Day.
It's my undies.
Oh, okay. We're good then. No pinching around
I'm
here.
good.
If you come in here and pinch me, it'll be the last thing you ever do.
I don't know how well equipped Kevin O'Connell is to deal with Aaron Rodgers compared to Mike Tomlin, but because the Vikings are a stable, competent organization, this feels like something that could potentially work. Also, how often does this gamble that the Vikings could potentially make in 2025 really work out, of going all in on J.J. McCarthy, a completely unproven quarterback with no insurance, really? Didn't work great for the Titans last year.
New England is doing the same thing around Drake May. They have no other choice. They have so much money to spend.
Yes, and Drake May at least showed something in his rookie year in New England, surrounded by nothing. But Minnesota, I mean, there's a lot at risk here for Minnesota. They are in a window. They are talented enough to compete for a championship. So putting all your chips in on a rookie, or I guess he'll be a second-year player coming off an injury that has yet to play a snap in the NFL, I don't hate them looking for some sort of insurance policy here.
Brandon, who is watching the show today on YouTube, where you can always live stream the show. You can subscribe to 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel if you're so inclined. Throw a like on the video while you're there. That always helps. Brandon asks, why does this station hate Aaron Rodgers? Well, I don't hate Aaron Rodgers. I hate the idea of him playing for the Titans because for what? It makes zero sense. At this point of his career, it makes zero sense. It makes zero sense for them. Doesn't make any damn sense for him either. So it's not necessarily about hating Aaron Rodgers. I just don't think he's a good player anymore. Like, how many quarterbacks in the NFL right now would give their team a better chance to succeed? Starting caliber quarterbacks in the NFL would give their team a better chance to succeed than 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, 2 years removed from an Achilles, and to the point where we are so willing to lower the discourse around Aaron Rodgers, where we're looking at last year's Jets season, an abject disaster, and saying, but he wasn't so bad the second half of the year.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Okay.
He wasn't. Like,
but come on. They sucked. Like, come on.
Yes,
let's keep the same, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's keep the same energy.
Both can be true.
I get that, but it's a terrible conversation to have, to talk yourself and Aaron Rodgers be like, it wasn't so bad. Worse record than Zach Wilson. I'm
sorry, but that is also I feel like saying that, you insinuate that Zach Wilson was better than Aaron Rodgers, and he wasn't. Not even remotely close.
I don't
Zach
think there's
Wilson,
that big of a gulf.
There is a huge gulf between Rodgers, what he did at the quarterback position, versus what Wilson did at the quarterback position the year prior.
Expand on that.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers was a much better quarterback for the Jets than Zach Wilson was for the Jets.
In what area was he a better quarterback than Zach Wilson
In
was?
every area. Take your pick. The Jets were a worse team, without question. They were a worse team. They fell apart. They fired their coach in the middle of the year. The locker room was in a disastrous state, and Rodgers did hijack this team. You could argue that he inflicted more damage on the organization as a whole.
He's the biggest
because
reason
of the stranglehold he had on them.
Zach Wilson was not doing the things that Aaron Rodgers was doing, not just on the football field, but off the football field, that directly helped the Jets to crater as badly as they did.
Rodgers is a big reason why they cratered, for sure. But it's not just strictly because of the football.
He is the biggest reason.
In 1 year with the Jets, Aaron Rodgers had more touchdowns than Zach Wilson did in 3 years with the Jets. He also had less interceptions. It is over 3 years, but 25 interceptions for Zach Wilson, only 11 for Aaron Rodgers.
So, the point stands, how many starting quarterbacks in the NFL would give their team a better chance to succeed than what we believe Aaron Rodgers would bring to a team? Because it's not just the player, it's all the other stuff that you don't have to account for. J.J. McCarthy's baggage or Brandon Allen's, personality quirks, or whoever, Geno Smith's interest in playing with former teammates, the way that you do have to do all of those things with Aaron Rodgers.
How many quarterbacks give you a better chance to win on any given day? Half the league?
Right. Think about that.
Yeah.
Half of the league. Aaron Rodgers, a Super Bowl champion at some point in his career.
How many quarterbacks give you a better chance to win than Zach Wilson is the question. 32?
All of them. Although Tua's backup in Miami is interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's going to play, that much we feel confident about.
Look at him laughing at the guy who has multiple concussion issues. Look at him.
Oh, stop
Man of the
it.
people, Lucas Panzika.
Stop it.
Let's point and laugh at Tua as he rides around with concussions on the ground.
As much as coaches and teams do the I can fix him thing with young quarterbacks that are unproven, that have all the tools and the talent, but haven't been able to show it right, Anthony Richardson, the list goes on and on. Do you think there's as much of that for the Rodgers situation of
I can fix him?
Not I can fix him, but I can handle him.
Yeah, that's the conversation.
Right. Like it's in the similar vein of thinking, but it's obviously, it's not this, trying to get out this untapped potential. No. It's can I just utilize the football talent and handle the rest of it? I feel like it's it's like the same part of the brain for these coaches.
Whatever it is, don't overthink it. I don't know. It's just such a weird thing. Let's get back to the college basketball because we had brackets released last night. We know the Tennessee Vols situation. So now what are expectations relative to last year where this team performed at a really, really high level? How do we feel about the 2025 Tennessee Vols in March Madness? We'll get into that coming up next.
It is 11:02. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The NCAA tournament field of 68 is set. Tennessee, the 2 seed in the Midwest region. They will take on Wofford on Thursday. 2 other mid-state teams are in. Vanderbilt, the 10 seed in the East, facing St. Mary's on Friday. Lipscomb is the 14 seed in the South. They will play Iowa State on Friday. Memphis also in as a 5 seed. They will play 12 seed Colorado State. The Titans released veteran cornerback Cheeto Awuzie over the weekend. The 29-year-old played in 8 games last season. And in other NFL news, the Bengals have paid their wide receiver duo. Jamar Chase gets 4 years, $161 million, $112 million guaranteed. He is now the highest paid non-quarterback in league history. And T. Higgins getting 4 years, $115 million with the first 2 years guaranteed. In the AFC South, the Houston Texans are giving cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. a 3-year, $90 million extension with $89 million in guaranteed money. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
For the 7th consecutive year, the Vols are going dancing. Congratulations to Tennessee. Congratulations to Lipscomb. Congratulations to Memphis. Congrats to Vandy.
Men's and women's.
Getting in the tournament. Across the board, a great year for in-state hoops, and we're looking forward to a fun and highly competitive tournament. And we do expect, as a number 2 seed for the 2nd straight year, the University of Tennessee to be one of those highly competitive programs in the dance. The question is, what are realistic expectations given how far this program made it last year in March under Rick Barnes? And that is going to be a part of the talking point, right? Tennessee all-time in NCAA tournament competition is 28-27. Under Rick Barnes, they're 9-6 heading into or in the midst of the 10th year under Rick Barnes. It's the most victories in March Madness of any coaching program history.
Yeah, he's got a lot of those marks now. The most victories in an NCAA tournament, the most, whatever you want to bring up, whatever metric you want to bring up, Rick Barnes probably at the top in the history of Tennessee men's basketball.
So expectations are relative to the level of competition that you're talking about. And the level of competition that we're talking about is the hardest tournament, I think, to win in sports at any level, collegiate, professional, or otherwise. March Madness is a bear. And yeah, one of the better teams will end up winning it. One of the healthier teams will end up winning it. So you can go about this thing assuming chalk, but a single elimination tournament like this, the degree of difficulty, especially with the amount of games that you'll have to play in a relatively short span of time, it can throw a lot of wrenches into the mix, and certainly Tennessee is no stranger to that. This year versus last year, is it even, first and foremost, is it even worth comparing the 2 teams heading into the tournament for what Tennessee was able to do last year and kind of seeing the way that this Tennessee team has operated with a lot of different pieces and parts? Some returning stalwarts. Of course, you talk about Jemai Mashak and Zakai Ziegler and Rick Barnes as a presence in the middle of all this, but there's a lot of different components here to this Tennessee team that make it different from last year's group.
Well, there's no question that this Tennessee team is playing better going into the tournament than last year's group. Last year's team went out with a senior day loss to Kentucky in the last game of the regular season, and then, of course, crashed out in the SEC tournament with a terrible performance, blown out by Mississippi State, before matching the deepest run in program history. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to align those things and try to figure out how that matches up, if the way you ended the season is going to have any effect on how you play in the NCAA tournament. Vols were really impressive against Auburn. And then, like you said, Florida just relentless. They wave after wave. They always had an answer whenever Tennessee would cut it to a 5-point Florida lead late and out-rebounded, points in the paint. Vols were just kind of dominated around the basket, and that was ultimately the difference. Florida, arguably, not arguably at this point, they're playing better than any team in the SEC going into this tournament, any of those 14 teams. But you're a 2 seed this year. You were a 2 seed last year. For me, if you're talking about what defines success for Tennessee in this tournament, I think it has to be at least matching the deepest run you've ever made and the run you made last year, Elite Eight. That's the only way I can come away from this tournament saying this season was a smashing success. That, you know what I mean? Like, Sweet 16 at this point is the bare minimum, right? If you get to the Sweet 16, you just avoided worst case scenario. Worst case scenario being getting bounced in the second round or first round.
Do you fear the mighty Wofford Terriers?
Don't they have the guy that does the underhand or the granny shot free throws?
Oh. Is he on Wofford?
Yeah.
I've seen that guy's, is it even fair to call it a highlight reel on the internet? I've definitely seen that. I did not realize that he played for Tennessee's upcoming opponent.
That's right, the Terriers.
Unbelievable. So going to the Elite Eight would signal that this season was an unmitigated success.
I think so. I mean, obviously, you look for a Final Four, the first one in program history. That's the goal. But for me to walk away from this tournament feeling really, really good about this team maximizing its opportunities, Elite Eight is baseline for me.
Did last year's team maximize their opportunities?
No, because that was a championship-worthy team, I think.
Is this year's team better or worse than last year's team? Because I would argue that they are worse by degrees in a couple of different areas, including the fact that I know that people keep trying to manifest this Chaz Lanier thing, and it's not like he's a bad player or anything like that, but he's not Dalton Connect.
No, and he never was. He was always a different player.
They tried to convince me at the start of the basketball season that he could be better.
No, I was simply pointing out some statistical similarities.
Okay.
But they've always been very different players, very different play styles.
Yeah.
But that is a really interesting question. Is this Tennessee team, would this Tennessee team beat last year's Tennessee team?
I don't think so.
Head-to-head. I also don't think so. Dalton Connect was just that ultimate difference maker.
And he would have slumps, right? And he would his points per game average, it's one of the reasons I don't love counting stats. It would get inflated by some of these otherworldly performances, and then he'd go cold for a little while.
For sure. And that's a fascinating question to ask a basketball coach. Casey Alexander will be here in a few minutes.
Is he coming in here?
He'll be in studio. Belmont head coach Casey Alexander, and he's matched up with plenty of these teams in the NCAA tournament.
He's going to be very gentle with me about my program not making March Madness.
But in a weird way, I think this Tennessee team is more well-rounded. They aren't as deep. Their rotation of 7 to 8 guys is much more set, which makes me think Tennessee kind of knows who they are more this year than last year, whereas there was a tendency to just get out of Dalton's way and let him do his thing, to be over-reliant on Dalton Connect. And that worked for Tennessee at several points last year. But I do think this Tennessee team they're more well-rounded in who they are, in the roles that everybody plays, because they know there is no scenario where you can just get out of one guy's way and let him take over. It has to be a team effort if Tennessee's going to be at its best. Whereas last season, I'd argue Tennessee at its best was Dalton Connect scoring 40 points.
Yeah. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. If you would like to jump in there, you are welcome to do so, and we can talk about expectations for this Vols team. And again, watching that in person yesterday and having taken in a good chunk of the SEC tournament, obviously Tennessee's results were good until Florida just outplayed them. Florida just a better basketball team at this point in time, and I would argue that Florida may well be, or at least right now, heading into the tournament, looks like the best team in the sport.
I agree.
I don't know, because we talked about the depth. We talked about the depth of the conference, and then Florida just went through the tournament and kicked everybody's ass. It wasn't particularly close against it, but against the Gators, with the competition that they were met with in the best conference in college basketball, which we all have talked about at great length. RJ is in Phoenix. Always good to hear from RJ. What's up, bud?
What's going on, fellas? How y'all doing, man?
Good.
So, I basically mostly out here just get to see highlights of the game. And I know y'all was talking about Dalton Connect last year, and I know last year it was like if he had a good game, we had more of a chance to win. And if he had a bad game, we didn't have a chance to win. Who is that player for us this year? Or like y'all was talking about all the talent is spread out. Is there someone on our team that, like, if he has a good game, we have a chance to win, but if he doesn't go off, then we don't have a chance in this tournament? Who is that guy for us, and how far realistically? Because looking at our side of the bracket, I saw Houston. Can we beat anybody but Houston?
Thanks for the call, RJ. I mean, it's an interesting conversation because, like, I don't think that they need Chaz Lanier to go off to have a good game, but I do think that they need Igor Milicic.
And he has not played his best basketball as of late.
Right.
He's getting in early foul trouble. Zakai Ziegler, though, is my answer.
Okay.
How important guard play is in this tournament, and just the leader that he is, the tone setter for Tennessee, both sides of the ball. Zakai Ziegler needs to be at his absolute best if Tennessee's going to make a really deep run. But you're right. I mean, the role players, the X factors, like Jordan Gainey stepping up, scored, 24 in the SEC championship, wasn't enough on Sunday, but you're going to need some performances like that. I mean, I can think of, in the deepest runs Tennessee has made, I think back to that Sweet 16 run that felt better than a Sweet 16 run because Tennessee was in the first four under Conzo Martin in the 2013 or 2013-14 season. So 2014 tournament, Tennessee was in the first four, and they got matched up with Iowa in the first four, beat Iowa in overtime, and went on to the Sweet 16, losing to Michigan in very controversial fashion late. And Josh Richardson, the sparky freshman, just having a breakout tournament is what sparked Tennessee to the Sweet 16 that year. And Richardson went on to have a great college career and is still playing in the NBA. So you need those sort of role players to step up in those moments. So I'm with you. Igor Milicic Jr., you would like to see him kind of get back to being just that well-rounded player, that the type of player Tennessee hasn't really had under Rick Barnes, that stretch four that can step out and hit a three, that can play in the post and avoid getting into early foul trouble, which he has done as of late. But there's no question Ziegler is the tone setter for this team.
615-737-1045 is how you jump in if you want to talk hoops. Speaking of talking hoops, Casey Alexander, Belmont men's basketball coach, will join us in studio, unfortunately for him, coming up next. If you've dealt with ED, you know how frustrating it can be, especially if you've been taking pills and over time the pills stop working because you go through changes as your body ages and things like ED can happen. The Tennessee Men's Clinic has helped guys for over a decade plus here in Middle Tennessee, making sure that they can operate at their peak performance levels. And if you are seeking options as far as treatment, you may deal with some misconceptions about what it is to treat ED. For example, if you go to your family doctor, they may suggest to you irreversible surgery because it's simply the only protocol that they have available. Do not go through something as extreme as irreversible surgery to treat ED before you have talked to the experts at the Tennessee Men's Clinic because they specialize in men's sexual health issues. It's all they do. It makes them the experts in the field, and they have access to multiple protocols and options to treat ED based on your specific needs and what's going on in your body. So don't trust your health to an online pharmacy and don't feel like you're out of options. Call the Tennessee Men's Clinic today because their protocols are patient-centered and customized to your needs. They have treatments for everything from low T, ED treatments that increase size, stamina, and everything else in between. Schedule an appointment online today at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for their Franklin or Midtown location, or call them 615-208-9090. Welcome back to the show, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in. Unfortunately for Belmont men's basketball coach Casey Alexander, it is his turn to jump back in with the program. Belmont having another successful season. I understand that the tournament is always the goal, but you guys find ways to win games in a conference that gets tougher and tougher every year in the Missouri Valley, Coach, and it's good to see you, even though you're probably not happy to see us.
I would definitely rather be practicing, but hey, here I am. This is a good alternative.
Nobody believes you.
It's an alternative. How about that?
Yeah, it is absolutely an alternative. You are always good to come in here and break down the bracket with us. It's an interesting bracket, and obviously a great many teams that you're familiar with. I want to talk about Drake, though, because they're always so interesting as a program, and certainly they gave you guys, you gave them good competition throughout the course of the regular season and into the Arch Madness tournament, but ultimately just came up a little bit short there. It was 57-50, I believe, was the final. What is it about Drake that makes them so difficult and so consistent to play against?
Well, very unique in their style. Ben McCullum, first-year coach, well documented that he brings 4 of his national championship Division II guys with him, including Bennett Sturts, who ended up being Player of the Year in our league. But their style is overwhelmingly slow, literally dead last in tempo in the country. So possessions per game, very, very slow tempo. A little bit of Tony Bennett, Virginia-esque style, but Tony built his teams on the defensive end, and Drake is extraordinarily good on the defensive end as well, but it's more so their just efficiency and slow attack offensively. It's really death by 1,000 cuts. We were up 12 in our semifinal game with them in the conference tournament, but just could not find ways to score in the second half, and eventually gave in and finished up.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, maybe not the most aesthetically pleasing style of play, but it's effective, and it gets them wins, and obviously they find themselves again in the NCAA tournament as a result. Just the bracket, any thoughts on the bracket in general before we talk about the way that my Indiana Hoosiers were slighted by Bubba Cunningham?
I don't think we have to.
Corrupt athletic director of the North Carolina Tar Heels. No business that North Carolina has getting in the bracket, but neither here nor there.
We definitely can talk about that, and I tend to agree. But you know what's overwhelming to me when I look at it is just the fervor that Florida has created. Well deserved. Yeah. I mean, what they did this weekend, and I would be, it's not even an argument how talented they are and what their capabilities are. But, you go back 4 or 5 days ago and you're trying to figure out, are they going to be on the one line or is Tennessee going to be on the one line? And now everybody in the country has them picked to win the whole thing. So that part is pretty unique. I think we all know that there are a number of, especially SEC schools, that nobody's going to be surprised if they're in the Final Four cutting down the nets. But for them to kind of jump over everybody over the course of 3 days and be the pick, it feels a little bit too hot and heavy for me.
Prisoner of the moment. Not like we would ever be guilty of doing something like that in sports.
Well, it is interesting to try to decipher what the end of a team's season means for the type of run they're about to go on. We were talking about it in regards to Tennessee in the SEC tournament. In Tennessee's best year in the SEC tournament, winning it, they were bounced in the first weekend. Last year, flamed out immediately, one and done, and then made that run to the Elite Eight. I mean, as a coach, how much of a mental game are you trying to play with your players, trying to figure out where they're at, depending on how your season ended? I mean, for Florida, you're celebrating this SEC championship, and then you have to turn around and get ready for an NCAA tournament run. How much of just a mind game is it as a head coach trying to put your guys in the right direction based on how a season ended?
Yeah, I think if you ask any of us, and you have two choices, hey, would you love to be playing well going into the NCAA tournament or struggling?
Yeah.
We would all choose the playing well part, and that's where Florida is right now. But the reality is it does not carry over the way that you would think that it does. And the examples you just gave, and there are many, many more every season. And especially in hoops where we all know it's such a tournament game, where you're playing, who you're playing, the matchup, the style of play, one good day or one bad day, and the season is over. That's the beauty of March Madness, and that's why it's so difficult to predict.
Obviously, you guys have great familiarity with Lipscomb. Battle of the Boulevard, the rivalry, won a dramatic game against them early in the year. ASUN champions, the 14 seed, taking on 3 seed Iowa State, who has some injury questions, Coach. Keyshawn Gilbert out. He's their leader in assists and minutes, their second lead scorer. How does Lipscomb match up with Iowa State? Obviously, you have great familiarity with the Bisons.
Yeah, and a lot of credit to Lipscomb. They had a great year and very unique these days in the sense that they return so many old guys and guys not that are just old and experienced, but are experienced in their program. Guys, Ognasovic and Pruitt and Anderson, guys that have been around for a long time. And so I think they're as prepared as they're ever going to be to walk into this postseason with confidence and feel like they can win the game. And then you look at early season matchups that they had, especially with Arkansas, where they took them to the wire and played really, really well. The moment will not be too big for them. The style is what's going to determine kind of the outcome of that game. Iowa State is so pressure heavy defensively, play really hard, and can be so disruptive to anybody that they play. And then you got a Lipscomb team who is extremely efficient offensively and experienced, as we mentioned. And so that will determine their success level and how long they can stay in the game or if they can win the game, which I do believe they can.
I want to talk about North Carolina in the middle of all this because they lose to Duke in the ACC championship, in the ACC tournament. Their resume is filled with losses to quality teams in this year's bracket. Their athletic director is the chair of the committee that puts together the bracket and is speaking yesterday on ESPN. In fact, can I hear from Bubba Cunningham, if you would be so kind, Robert, your beloved North Carolina Tar Heels athletic director?
I am very familiar with all of the protocols and procedures inside that committee room. You guys go to great lengths to make sure there are no conflicts of interest. You are the athletic director of the University of North Carolina in your day job, so it's going to be a natural question for people who don't know all those procedures to ask whether North Carolina may have gotten a little bit of an advantage that their AD is a chair. So I'm going to invite you to answer that question, and then maybe if Keith could shed some light on that discussion.
Well, thanks, Seth. And obviously, I'm going to defer that to Keith. But, all the policies and procedures were followed, and Keith can address exactly how North Carolina was discussed, because I was not in the room for any of that.
Yeah, thanks, Bubba. And Seth, I appreciate the question. As the vice chair, I managed all the conversations that we had about North Carolina. We had quite a few. Our policies require the AD of any school to recuse themselves and actually leave the room for those discussions, and they're not allowed to participate in any vote as well. So we followed those, had lots of discussions about North Carolina. Saturday night we took our final vote, and we voted in 4 teams in the field on Saturday night, and we had a contingency vote. And the contingency vote, that was the last team in the field. And it was based on Memphis and UAB. If Memphis won that game, then that was going to free up a spot in the tournament, and that was going to be North Carolina. If UAB had won, then Memphis was going to be in the tournament, UAB would have been in the tournament, and North Carolina would have been the first team out.
Casey, it's tough for me to sit there and listen to that explanation, even understanding that Bubba Cunningham may have not been in the room, given that Indiana, no matter how I felt about how their season went, is one of these teams that's in the first 4 out and North Carolina gets in. What do you make of that explanation by the chair and the vice chair of the NCAA selection committee?
Yeah, so many layers to it, and we could argue for days, about a number of teams, but especially Indiana, and in this case, we're talking about North Carolina. I totally trust the integrity of the room and how the decisions are made. There's no chance that he was a part of those conversations and had no influence over North Carolina getting into the field. But there's also a human element where those gentlemen, or I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know who consisted of the selections committee, but there's the human element is they spent weeks together, and they're very familiar with each other, and they're very familiar with the cause of everybody that's trying to get in, and so. I have to believe that played into it to some degree, even with the best of intentions for it not to. You look at all the metrics, all the numbers, and I just can't make a case for North Carolina being in the field. That's
not a single case.
Yeah, that's what's so difficult about it. You mentioned Indiana. The argument for Carolina is, well, their non-conference strength of schedule was so good and so forth and so on. Well, their overall strength of schedule was 41, and Indiana's was 28. And then you could go on any other metric that you want to, quad ones, quad twos, lack of quad 3 or quad 4 losses. And in every case, it's Indiana. It's even Ohio State. It's even West Virginia.
Yeah.
So the fact that they surpassed all of those schools just makes no sense to me whatsoever.
I know he left the room, but I want to know what kind of room we're talking about. Is it a conference room with glass doors and windows where he is hovering and staring into the eyes
outside, looking in
of everybody on the committee? I don't know.
Maybe left a Post-it note on the table, being like,
right.
Jesse,
I feel like we need more information.
North Carolina, no matter what.
What's so interesting about the selection, and I couldn't tell you exactly from A to Z how it works, but I do know very much the process, and it's not what all of our listeners would think. They are most of this is decided well in advance, and instead of it being, hey, let's look at these 4 or 5 teams and let's discuss everything and let's figure out who needs to be in, they really go one by one. And so if you are out of the at-large, I don't know how many there are, 33, 4, something like that, at-large selections, if you're 30 and they've moved on to 31, where they're not coming back to 30.
Right.
And then they get to 32 and they're not coming back to 31, and so that's how things kind of, at the end, you go back and look at it and you think, how did they come to that conclusion? It's like, well, they stopped talking about that 3 days ago, and now they're moved on to something else. So it's a pretty effective, but not traditional way of looking at it, the way that we would here in the studio.
Belmont head coach Casey Alexander with us in studio. Of the 2 seeds, St. John's, Michigan State, Alabama, Tennessee, is there one whose path you think is more favorable?
I don't know if I would say path. I like Tennessee's path, at least to get where they're supposed to get to. I think that looks pretty favorable.
Which to you is?
Well, I mean, they're supposed to get to the Elite Eight and play Houston for a chance to go to the Final Four. I mean, I would be a little surprised if they don't reach that. Alabama's a team that started the year number 1, and they've been phenomenal at times, but also less than at others. Michigan State, a little bit under the radar, as crazy as that is to think about a Tom Izzo team in March flying under the radar. But and then a St. John's team that wins the regular season and the tournament in the Big East, which is deserves a lot of credit. I think they're all really, really good. I would take Tennessee, honestly, out of those 4 to make it to the Final Four.
Don't start playing Rocky Top yet. Just settle
down.
That.
I like the sound of it.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I am curious, though, because there are cliches, right? Guard play, defense that we bring up every time for what constitutes a team that can make a deep run. But then you look at in Alabama last year, a team that hangs its hat on going up and down, scoring the ball, the three-pointer, and they make it to the Final Four. I think they were a little better defensively last year than people give them credit for, and maybe they took a step back there this year. But what are the traits as a head coach that you look at when you're asked that question of, okay, what does a team need to make a deep run in the tournament?
Yeah, I'd say it's a similar answer to what I gave earlier, in a sense that we all love great guards in March. We all love experience. We all love having been there before, but the reality is it's going to be who plays really well in one game and then another game and then another game. And that's how you get to the Final Four and to your ultimate champion. I mean, all these teams are great teams. We could list 6-8 teams that legitimately could win the national championship, most of which come from the SEC. But when they match up with each other, then it's going to be who plays well in that one game that moves on.
I want to ask you about Mark Byington and Vanderbilt, because he comes in, obviously transfer portal and NIL, huge factors in the landscape of collegiate athletics, and they bring in a lot of transfers, and maybe not the finish to the season in the conference tournament that they would have liked, but Vandy has really brought back a level of competency, both in men's and women's basketball, frankly. Tennessee, the same. It's impressive to see what the local hoop scene has become over the course of the past couple of years. But what do you make of the job that Mark Byington and Vanderbilt has done?
Yeah, incredible job. Not surprised at all either. The job that he did at James Madison, and then the roster that he assembled when he got here, even though it was under some pretty tough circumstances, speaks to just the tremendous body of work that he and his staff have done over there. It's also, an indicator of a couple of things to me. One, in modern day hoops where the transfer portal is so real, you can flip it around really quickly. And then also, I would say, to Vanderbilt's credit, I think there are a lot of people in the SEC and in Nashville because it had been so dry for so long. Like, can Vanderbilt do this?
Yeah.
Is it a possibility? And we see, in one season's time that Memorial Magic still lives, that Vanderbilt has everything they need from a hoops perspective to be relevant. And Mark and his staff proved that with flying colors this year.
A successful season for you guys as a program, and it seems that all Belmont basketball does with you during your tenure, Casey, is win 20-plus games. And I know you guys, again, would have liked to have been in the dance and to had a better success in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament. But for you guys, what is the next step for your program as you try to not just meet the mark of 20 games and on, but continue to try and push for an NCAA berth?
Yeah, we're fighting hard to make that happen. The best thing about it for me as the coach at Belmont is Belmont gives us a great chance to be successful. We got great facilities. We're in a great city. We're in a great league. We've got a lot of historical success. So there's not a lot for me to complain about. The times that we're in, we're still trying to figure out transfer portal, NIL, keeping players on our roster. It was 12 months ago we lost 3 players, all conference players who were sophomores on our team to North Carolina and Maryland and Ole Miss and had to start over. So retention is a big part of it. We've talked about experience a couple of times during our time together here, and we have not had that. And even in our league, it's a crucial element to success. So player retention, so that we can come back year after year and feel like, we've got the experience we need to win a really tough league. That's the next hurdle for us. But I would also say, we are proud of what we've done. 15 straight years of 20 or more wins. Only literally a small handful of teams have done that. And Belmont's men and women have combined for 20 wins or more for 10 straight years, and we're the only school in the country who has done that.
It's awesome. I love college basketball for a great many reasons, but it's so great to have the city, top to bottom, have so many great college basketball programs, men's and women's.
Yeah, and you're in some elite company when it comes to the streak that your program, the men's program, is on. How much of a mutually beneficial relationship is that with the women's program? I know they didn't have the finish they wanted in the conference championship game yesterday, but, we're seeing that with Tennessee, with the Lady Vols and the men's program, Vanderbilt with the men's and women's program. I feel like you see that a lot where it's sort of this rising tide. How do those things connect to you?
Well, that's where you have to give administration a lot of credit. I think we've got great alignment from president to AD to coaching staffs. I think we've got resources. I think we have facilities. Those are the things that you need to be consistent over time. Everybody can do it once or periodically or most often, but it's really hard to do it year after year after year if you don't have all of those elements in place, and then we're just riding on the coattails of those who've come before us, right? A lot of good players, a lot of good teams, a lot of good coaches, and trying not to screw it up.
Are you rooting for Lipscomb?
Of course.
I'm almost a little sorry to hear how happy you are at Belmont, because I was going to ask you if you wanted to be my next basketball coach.
I think I could stomach the fat wallet.
We got money, Casey. Come on down, bud.
Man, you're going to get a good one, and
just keep telling me that.
Yeah.
Just keep telling me.
You may have mentioned the name already in this discussion today, but, no better fan base than Indiana's, in my opinion, and so I hope you get somebody that will take you to the tournament quite often.
Just for my mental health at this point. I'm so
mercifully left out of the field this year.
Truly, now I can enjoy my basketball season. Casey, it's good to see you, bud.
Great to be here.
That's Casey Alexander, the Belmont men's basketball coach, doing a good bit of tournament analysis for us. We'll bother Casey at some point, I'm sure, throughout the course of the bracket. Coming up next, can the Bengals really run it back, paying 2 wide receivers a total of $70 million a year? I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We're fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. It's always good to have Casey Alexander in studio talking some hoops. I tried to bribe him under the table on the way out the door to become the next Indiana men's basketball coach, and I just didn't have enough money on me.
No, Belmont's not going to let us have him back. You keep trying to do that.
Listen, I just want a good basketball coach. And Casey's really good at what he does. I just want anybody that's not Archie Miller. Hell, I'd take Tom Crane back. Tom, please, if you're anywhere within the sound of my voice, please consider. Not a chance. Get back into some NFL stuff here in just a second, but if you want to talk hoops, we are open for business, 615-737-1045. Speaking of things that you can jump in on, you can jump in on 1045 The Zone's 2025 Golf Classic presented by Ferguson on Monday, June the 9th. At Nashville Golf and Athletic Club. I know we like going out to Dixon. Greystone is the name of the
Greystone Golf Club.
And they're always good to host us, but I do love the idea of going to Nashville Golf and Athletic Club this year. Located in the heart of Cool Springs, this historic golf course features breathtaking panoramic views of the beautiful Middle Tennessee countryside. The 2025 Golf Classic will be highlighted with great food, cocktails, prizes, and special guests. You can purchase your team today and choose between 2 flights, 8 a.m. or 1 p.m., and spend the day teeing off with 1045 The Zone. For more information or to purchase a team, visit 1045thezone.com. Let's go to Bill in Hermitage that wants to talk basketball.
Hey, guys, it's actually Dylan, but that's not the discussion. I just had a quick question. As far as Rick Barnes, without a doubt, Hall of Fame coach, I just kind of question throughout this year, seems like there's been several times where the balls have been up a lot, where it's just coast through it. And instead of it just being, keep the pedal down and doing it, it seems like they make bonehead decisions and they kind of just get very lackadaisical. And it's one of those where at that point you question him as a coach on those certain games. I'm going to hop off and listen.
Thanks for the call, Dylan. I don't get a sense of lacking effort or lacking urgency when Tennessee struggles. Like, and it's a 1-game sample size, so maybe it's not a full season-long picture of evaluation, but they just got beat by a better team yesterday at Bridgestone Arena in Florida. They got out-rebounded. They got outscored. They got out physical. They don't have the size that Florida has. There's a number of different things that Tennessee is working against. And it's not to make excuses for them, but I don't get a sense that Rick Barnes doesn't have their attention.
No, not at all. And he mentioned Tennessee when they get up big, when they get leads and lose these advantages. And that happened on Saturday. They were up 12-13. As that game was getting into the final stages, and then Auburn made a big run, 10-0 run, whatever it was, late. And
Auburn's a good basketball
Auburn's the
team,
number 1 overall seed in this tournament.
Yeah.
That's also just been life in the SEC this year. Tennessee does experience droughts, right? They're good for a 3 to 4 minute scoring drought or 3 to 4 minutes of 0 points from the field in any given game. But, every team is going to have their flaws. The one thing Tennessee doesn't have this year is a Dalton Connect. But like we talked about earlier, I do think Tennessee is a little bit more well-rounded. I think they're better in the post this year. I think Felix Okpara, at his best, gives them something that Jonas Adu did not at any point last year. So they're better in some areas, worse in others, and they're the exact same seed that they were last year, a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. So there's always things to nitpick. But, yeah, I have a hard time putting anything on Rick Barnes in that regard. Tennessee has given up some leads this year, sure, but the SEC has also just been brutal.
We are going to talk about the Bengals here in just a second because the news of the day in the NFL is that they are giving T. Higgins and Jamar Chase contract extensions that between them would cost $70 million in average annual value to 2 players, even as the salary cap went up to $279.5 million this year. I do want to quickly mention something Bert just sent into the group, a report from Tony Grossi, who's a Cleveland-based NFL reporter and analyst for ESPN Cleveland, 850 ESPN Cleveland, The Patriots are expected to be asking for a third-round pick to trade Joe Milton.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's insane. The quote, sources closer to the situation than me expect the asking price of the Patriots to be a third-round pick.
What?
Seems absurd.
I thought for sure you were going to go full heel and say, "Oh, that's Joe Milton on the cheap. Trade for him now."
Even I can't do that.
Come on.
My question is, where would Joe Milton stack up in this quarterback class?
Oh, that's a tough question to answer.
He's what, a sixth round pick last year?
I thought he was a 6th or a 7th.
6. Pick 193.
Where would Joe Milton stack up in this quarterback class? Because he's, again, the physical abilities are what is going to make Joe Milton attractive, what did make Joe Milton attractive, but in his own draft class, where there was a bunch of quarterbacks and 6 went in the first round, and then another one didn't go until Spencer Rattler on day 3 for certain. I can't remember if Rattler was a 4th or a 5th round choice. But it's
5th.
Yeah, have we figured out who the third best quarterback in this class is, or are we just shrugging our shoulders and saying Jackson Dart?
It's Jackson Dart.
All right, but then after Jackson Dart, are we like tiptoeing into the Tyler Shuck conversation out of Louisville, who's played so much college football? Well, didn't play so much college football because his injuries are a big story of the Tyler Shuck experience, the Louisville quarterback. But talent evaluators really seem to like him.
There's no consensus, right? Jalen Milroe is going to creep up at some point.
One would think.
Because of the sheer athleticism.
Would you rather have Joe Milton or Jalen Milroe as a draft prospect?
Oh, no, that's a fascinating question.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of just a different version of what you asked me.
I want to say Milroe was a better college quarterback.
I would agree.
Milroe had better big game performances, certainly took Alabama further than Joe Milton took Tennessee, at least in his first full year as a starter, but it was such a regression for Milroe last year and that Kalen DeBoer offense. I think, if you're just talking about them as prospects, then I probably would have leaned Milroe because I've seen him do it in big games.
Yeah, as prospects.
The athleticism is just ridiculous.
Because isn't that the question that you asked me? Where would they stack up in this class?
Right. But then we did see Joe Milton, what he did in that regular season finale, and I know who it was against. It was Bills backups, and the Bills didn't seem particularly interested in winning that game.
It got Gerard Mayo fired.
For sure. And I think the Bills were perfectly content, if they're being honest, and, the Patriots not getting a better draft pick because of that game. But he was phenomenal in that regular season finale. He's running around in the backfield, throwing 90-mile-an-hour darts into the end zone. But, I'd probably lean Milroe. And then on top of all of that, you've got the quarterback that just led Ohio State to a national championship in Will Howard, who was phenomenal in the college football playoffs. So the QB 3-4 conversation, it is a little complicated in this draft. Stoney Keeley is in the F&M Bank chat. Says a third-round pick is nothing for a future Hall of Famer.
That would be the position I would have expected Lucas to take. So we will see. We'll get back to the Bengals conversation a little later on. Obviously, the news is that they are paying both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and still trying to work out a way to get Trey Hendrickson on a more player-friendly contract relative to his production. But I did feel, since we were talking Vols, that was a Vols-adjacent story that was worth mentioning. So, speaking of deals and trades in the NFL, it is being reported by ESPN that the Giants deal for the number 1 overall pick has a recent development. We will tell you what that recent development is coming up next.
It is 12:01. Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. We have a bracket. The NCAA tournament field of 68 is set, and Tennessee is the 2 seed in the Midwest region. They take on Wofford Thursday. A win would move the Vols on to the second round to face either UCLA or Utah State. 2 other teams out of Middle Tennessee are in. Vanderbilt, the 10 seed in the East. They face St. Mary's on Friday. Lipscomb, the 14 seed in the South. As the Atlantic Sun champions, they'll play Iowa State on Friday. In Titans news, the team released veteran cornerback Chidobe Awuzie over the weekend. The 29-year-old played in 8 games last season, and a big deal in the AFC South that broke this morning. The Houston Texans are giving cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. a 3-year, $90 million contract extension with $89 million in guaranteed money. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. March is upon us. Brackets are upon us. It's a wonderful time in the sports calendar. Free agency has wound down, which is grammatically correct there. And also we have cookies. So morale is high in the studio. Zach Lyons has finally broken me. He continues to bring in all kinds of treats from his wonderful wife, Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I have held off, though, with the sweets that he brings in because I do have a sweet tooth, but certainly during the show, not prone to eating the way that the two of you are. So much so that Robert ran in here in the middle of Lucas's sports update to steal the cookies back from us. But chocolate chip, butterscotch chip cookies, I'm all in for. I had 2.
My feet are so sweaty, I almost slipped running in the hall.
Why are your feet sweaty? Are you running barefoot?
Well, I don't wear socks or Crocs. What kind of rule is that?
Oh, God, I forgot about your Crocs. Did we ever get you an endorsement deal with Crocs? What happened with that?
No, I don't know what happened with it, but that's literally all I wear. The only thing I wear. But I would be willing to go barefoot. That's the only position I'm going to take, is that I would be willing to swap out the Crocs for just my tooters.
All the time?
I could do all the time. Maybe not in the bathroom.
Restrooms.
Yeah, I would need some slippers or like some Crocs to use the bathroom in, but other than that, I don't care.
What about on a hike?
I could go bare. Is it a trail? Or are we roughing it? Like, I feel like I could go barefoot on a hike. I grew up, my dad had a gravel driveway, and I didn't wear shoes in it. So, like, can y'all walk on gravel? Would that bother y'all's feet? Would y'all be like, ooh, ah, ooh, ooh?
Yes.
You would be skipping the whole way through it?
100%.
Weenie.
Buck's feet are probably
soft as hell.
Yeah, so soft.
He got some soft feet.
I got a pedicure scheduled later this week, baby.
See, I feel like if they did that to my foot, like when they bring the cheese grater out. Yeah, like when they bring the cheese grater out and they start like knocking all the stuff off, it would be like a sawdust room.
Do you want to go?
No.
My treat.
Potentially. I feel like they're just going to talk crap about my feet the whole time. Like, they stink. Yeah, they got stains on them because I just wear Crocs.
They'll do it in a different language so you won't know.
But I want to know. I want to have my feelings hurt properly, not just let me wonder what they're saying.
Oh, don't worry. I'll do that for you.
You're going to translate?
I'll just keep Google Translate up on my phone.
I could be down with that.
So, Robert, a young Mac Hollins running around.
Well, even Mac Hollins apparently has limits. Public restrooms also for Mac Hollins require footwear.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it's not just a thing he does for attention on game days, the walking barefoot into the stadium.
Oh, you thought he was just a clout chaser?
Oh, yeah, I did. I for sure did. I just thought it was the thing he did. Oh, look at me. Look how cool I am. Oh, I'll play for Buffalo. It's cold and I'm barefoot. Isn't that crazy? That's what I thought it was.
You would call that a gout chaser, not a clout chaser. But I'm also upset about that because he gets to go in pretty much wherever he wants to barefoot. If I tried to come in here barefoot, they would fire me. They would. Do you think our bosses at Cumulus would have an issue with me being barefoot during my job?
I think in the hallways probably, but if you were back there in that small, smelly room that we keep you all in, then I think it would not smell any worse.
Ross said, please no. But I think what I'm going to do for the rest of the week, I think I'm going to try barefoot. I think I could pull it off.
Ross, are you happy to have us back? Because I will yell at him if he tries to gas you out of that room again.
Oh, I've been farting today.
Yeah, it's good to have some backup in the studio again. Last week was tough conditions, and I would appreciate, Bert, if you kept your shoes on this week.
The only thing you're getting back up on is I'm going to back this thing up on you, and you're going to hear a swift in the corner.
He's going to have
the only backup you got to worry about.
All the part-time producers unionizing.
Don't say that too loud now. I like our backup producers.
Well, yeah, because for some reason somebody gave you some level of responsibility that is overseeing the production staff around here.
That's right. I think I'm going to institute everyone barefoot Fridays.
No.
Barefoot Fridays. Everyone has to come in barefoot. Don't wear your shoes in here. I'll write you up.
I will write you up.
He can do that.
Do you have a pad and a pen that you actually run around like a hall monitor? You narc?
I wouldn't say, I'm not saying I'm a narc. I ain't going to tell on nobody. Just follow my rules or I'll get you in trouble. How about that?
All right. Well, we can get back to coverage of Bert's shoeless adventures at a later date. Sweaty feet. Always a lovely thought. What is also lovely is the idea of trading out of the number 1 overall pick. If you're the Tennessee Titans, that is a thought that I'm sure that they have had many times over throughout the course of this pre-draft process, but it seems that the market for the number 1 overall pick, what market was even out there to begin with, didn't seem like that much. But reportedly, the plan, according to ESPN's Giants reporter Jordan Raanan, any plan to trade for the number 1 overall pick for the New York Giants seems all but dead. Now, I don't know if they know something about Aaron Rodgers that would take them out of the number 1 overall pick, because right now, who are the quarterbacks under contract? It's just Tommy DeVito, isn't it?
Ooh, for the Giants, I believe so.
I
Drew
think
Lock
it's just DeVito.
is a free agent. Or did Drew Lock land somewhere?
Not that I saw, unless something happened over the weekend that I missed. I believe Drew Lock is still out there available to sign with the team.
Yes.
So it's just Tommy DeVito under contract. So you're banking on Aaron Rodgers. I know Jameis is scheduled to make a visit with the Giants later this week, which would be hilarious. Imagine being in a job-saving mode as Joe Shane and Brian Daboll and signing Jameis Winston to come play quarterback for the New York Football Giants. Why would the plan be all but dead unless the Titans were definitely taking Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick, so they were no longer listening to offers?
So that's the reporting.
Well, the reporting is that the plan is all but dead.
Right, because the feeling is the Titans are going to take Cam Ward with the number 1 pick.
If there was an offer that the Giants were making that was good enough for the Titans to move off of Cam Ward and by extension move off the number 1 overall pick, then I'm sure that the Titans would continue to be open for business. But right now, it does not seem that offer exists from anybody, not just the Giants.
Yeah.
Which, again, would have to start opening conversation with 2 first-round picks this year's and next year's.
So with every passing day, every passing move by the Titans, every passing headline and quarterback domino, the picture becomes clearer of Cam Ward being the number 1 overall pick to Tennessee.
Except for some trolls who thought cutting Cheeto Awuzie might reopen the Travis Hunter discussion.
Oh. Yes, cutting the injury-prone corner about to be 30 is what...
Who might have been 4th on your depth chart. Yes, yeah. Travis Hunter to the Titans, a lock?
That's funny.
I saw a couple of people on social media trying to pick that discussion back up. And listen, anything could happen, I guess. But there is no logical explanation for them doing anything but taking Cam Ward. Right?
At this point, no, there's not.
Not a single good argument exists for any other player to be taken with the number 1 overall pick if that number 1 overall pick is in fact being made by this team.
I've heard the argument or the question posed, if you're Mike Borgonzi, do you really want to go ahead and attach yourself to a quarterback now? You don't want to kind of push that down the road, fill out the roster as much as possible before you chain the legacy of your regime to a rookie quarterback now? Which I've never understood, period. I mean, to me, just results are results. And self-preservation is not a good enough argument as to why the Titans would not draft a quarterback. If anything, it would be quite the contrary. So, yeah, I can't think of any argument against right now. Any reasonable argument against taking Cam Ward with the number 1 pick. Other than what if you're just in love, head over heels with Jackson Dart? Is that the only scenario here? You feel like you can get a quarterback in the 2nd round You still that badly want to move out of the number 1 pick and get a third rounder to be able to draft a receiver or an edge or whatever it might be to fill one of the many needs on this roster? But how in love would you have to be with Jackson Dart or with Tyler Shuck or with Will Howard, whoever?
You wouldn't have to be in love with him. You would just have to have the draft pick compensation to offset how in love or how not in love you were with the player, and just take the quarterback, because you need a quarterback on this roster that's not Will Levis and Brandon Allen, respectfully. A quick side note, because the Titans, typically the custom has been to have free agent media availability either the week of free agency or the week after free agency. The Titans are declining to have free agent media availability under Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker, I guess. Do fans care? Are fans hell-bent on hearing from Dan Moore or Cody Barton or Brandon Allen or Van Jefferson or any of these players? Because that has been, the case since, I don't know, I got here when John Robinson was the general manager. Well, I guess I technically got here when Rustin Webster was the general manager, but I wasn't covering the team until John Robinson took over the job. And they've always had free agent media availability. But, other than I would like to get to me personally as somebody who covers this team, and it is important for me to know things beyond just what's going on, I would like to ask a couple of questions of these free agent players that at some point I'll be able to ask them. I don't think it's that important to fans.
Chosen in the FNM Bank chat says it is. Chad says, nah, it's not. An aggregate, I don't think it is. I don't think fans are pining to hear Dan Moore at a podium or Mike Borgonzi explaining the Dan Moore signing. Most of the feedback I get from Titans fans and friends of mine that are Titans fans is, you guys talk about the media availability thing with GMs. We do not care.
The GM thing, though?
Yeah.
I think fans started to care that they weren't hearing from Rand Carthon.
Like Rand Carthon last season.
Yeah. I think that people were after, or even 2 seasons ago when they traded Kevin Byard and nobody spoke about it, or when they traded DeAndre Hopkins. We all got it, but it would still be good to have somebody's voice on that.
Oh, I agree there.
And there were plenty of people who were trying to convince Rand Carthon to speak more often, and he in fact said that he would do better about that, and then he never did. So, listen, for me personally, I'm of two minds of this, because the media person in me wants to have as much media availability as humanly possible, selfishly. But, honestly, I don't care what they have to say. I don't care about anything that they're going to do until they start winning games again. Yes, the process to get to the point of winning games matters most. But Dan Moore and Zeitler and Van Jefferson and all these other players, I don't know. Are they really going to say anything that's that awe-inspiring? And what is the conversation with Dan Moore going to look like? Hey, do you think you deserve to be paid that amount of money? Because a lot of people don't think so. So it's probably more a media thing than it is a fan thing. I get both sides. Steve Lehman going to talk about some Titans free agency moves. Also going to talk brackets with us of News Channel 5 coming up next. Will I have enough money when I retire? When should I draw from Social Security? If these questions keep you up at night, let me introduce you to a team that's there to keep you on the right track and guide you through it. That's Trajan Wealth, Trajan Wealth, not just any financial firm. They're your partners in securing your financial future. And they're more than just a fiduciary firm. They're a family-owned, veteran-led team that puts your needs first. Let their decades of experience in retirement planning and wealth management work for you. Trajan Wealth offers free consultations to help you develop your plan and your peace of mind. So call them today at 615-270-5000. That's 615-270-5000, or visit them online at TrajanWealth.com. Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. This is a paid advertisement. Welcome back to the show, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Everybody needs a little extra Steve Lehman in their lives. News Channel 5. Of course, you could hear him on the call for Belmont men's basketball as well. Very Belmont-heavy day around here on the show. That's just fine.
It's a good program.
It is a good program. It is a program that deserves better. For example, postseason competition. And Steve was just kind of walking us through why the hell it is that Belmont is not in the NIT this year. Thanks for coming in, bud.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. So explain to the audience what you just dumbfounded Lucas and I with.
Well, they've made a big change to the postseason tournaments beyond the NCAA tournament of the last couple of years to really try and skew it towards the power conference teams and get more interest in non-NCAA tournament postseason tournaments. So what ended up happening is they gave automatic bids to the top two non-qualifiers to the NCAA tournament for the ACC and SEC as a response to the Big Ten, Big East, and Big 12, the Fox leagues, going and creating the Crown in Las Vegas. And then on top of that, to try and increase the value of the field, they said the next 12 highest rated, so now you're at like 6 and beyond, leagues get their best non-qualifier in. And so that's your first 16 teams into the NIT. Well, what's happening is now all these power conference schools that aren't qualifying for the NCAA tournaments, they're opting out.
Which is nothing new. I mean, that's been happening.
Over the last 3, 4, 5 years, it certainly happened. Indiana's opting out. Rutgers is opting out. Iowa's opted out. Several teams have opted out. And so what you end up happening is you have teams like LSU and South Carolina at the very bottom of the SEC guaranteed postseason berths if they want it. And you have the same thing in those other power conference leagues. And so you look at the NIT right now, 28 of the 32 teams are mid-major or low majors. There's several teams with losing records in there. It's just not a very good field. The Crown is very similar, though skewed more towards the power conferences. And meanwhile, you have a Belmont team, which is one of several, that's right on the cut line of 125 in the net and won 22 games this year, played its best basketball down the stretch, nearly beat Drake, really controlled that game until the final couple of minutes. And they're not in one of the 3 big tournaments while you have teams with losing records in. That, to me, is just a broken system in college basketball, and they've made tweaks to try to make it better. They have a ways to go to make it good.
There's a great many things about college basketball that are broken that I would like corrected, but that is also a deeply frustrating one, especially when you have quality programs who get left out just because of the way that they've tried to tinker with the postseason tournaments at this point. Steve Lehman, News Channel 5, hanging out with us. It was good to see Steve yesterday at Bridgestone Arena, where we watched Tennessee fall short against Florida. But, Steve, you and I were talking about this yesterday. Maybe it's just recency bias, and that's what we have to work off of, but we just saw Florida roll through the conference tournament and the best tournament in the country and look like the best team in college basketball. Doesn't mean that they will be throughout the duration of March Madness now, but I have a hard time kind of dinging people who are looking around at their brackets today and being like, why wouldn't I pick Florida to win it all?
Yeah, I agree. They look like the best team in the country, but I tell you what, Buck, the committee did them no favors.
Yeah.
They got sent out west. That's one, as the number 4 overall seed.
Tennessee wiping its brow, by the way, for avoiding that.
I think you could have made an argument for Florida to be higher in the number 1 seed pecking order. I'm fine with them being 4, but then they really get a brutal draw with some of the teams that are in. That is a stacked region to me. I do think Florida's good enough to come through it, but they're going to have to earn it if they do. I love what you see from Florida, but it's weird. I hate going chalk because it never seems to happen. But if there's a year to pick chalk in your bracket, this is the year. The 4 number 1 seeds, at least in terms of metrics, have distanced themselves from the rest of the field. I told you this stat yesterday, and I think you were pretty shocked by it, Buck. In the 25 years of the metric era in KenPom, there have been 4 teams entering the NCAA tournament in 25 years that have rated at 35 as a score or higher. All 4 of those teams at least made it to the Final Four. All 4 1 seeds in this year's tournament are rated 35 or higher.
Yeah.
So the 4 number 1 seeds in this tournament are metrically as good as the 4 best teams in the history of the metric era going into the tournament. That's the separation these 1 seeds have. It doesn't mean they're all going to make it. Obviously, each game is its own, But on paper, these four number one seeds are historically good.
Obviously, the SEC is a huge storyline here with 14 teams, shatters the previous record that was held by the Big East for any single conference getting, before it was 11, now 14 teams in. And I love that, the committee does do a good job usually of avoiding those intra-conference matchups, right, in the second round. But they're so unavoidable this year.
When half the field's from one conference, it's difficult.
It's hard. And you might have...
Unreal.
There are 3 potential SEC matchups in the second round. It could be Vandy versus Bama, Texas versus Kentucky, or Oklahoma versus Florida. To you, though, who's the weak link in the conference? Because all we talk about is, how many SEC teams could win the national championship, could go to the Final Four. Who's the one that you look at and think, they could get bounced, whether it's because of matchup or trends, whatever it might be?
Well, I would say the weak link in the conference in terms of teams that got in is Texas. They have a historically horrendous resume to be included into the tournament. They're in because of the number of quad one opportunities that are in the SEC. They didn't play anyone out of conference. No one. It is a terrible non-conference schedule. They finished way below 500 in the SEC. They just happen to have 4 or 5 quad one wins, which stacks up pretty well against other teams. But if you take out their quad 4 games, so I'm talking like the worst teams in college basketball, Texas went 10-15 this year. They went 10-15 against high major programs. Does that sound like an NCAA tournament resume? No, it doesn't. So I think Texas is the weak link in the league. That said, they're going to have a first 4 game. If they win, they would play my alma mater, Illinois, which at its best is really good. At its worst is not a tournament team. So that could be an interesting matchup even for them. So if you're talking about a vulnerable team, Lucas, I think it's Kentucky. And I wouldn't have said that a few weeks ago, but the injury to Jackson Robinson, he's out. And now you've got Lamont Butler, who's a great player, but I think he's going to be playing basically with one arm in the tournament. That is a different looking team than it looked a few weeks ago when they beat Tennessee for the second time. They're not really inclined defensively, which would be a great matchup for Illinois, which can really score it at its best. So I think if you're looking for a team that is seeded well because of the SEC strength that's vulnerable, that's Kentucky. But the weak link is Texas.
Where are you on Arkansas? As a 10 seed, love the Cal/Bill Self matchup in the first round.
And Rick Pitino,
the winner can meet Rick Pitino in the second round. As much as the committee will say that they don't do any of this for the storylines, right? They're not trying to pit these big name coaches against each other. Some things you just can't make up.
But I also don't care what the committee has to say after Bubba Cunningham being like, me being the North Carolina athletic director had nothing to do with North Carolina. Speaking of awful resumes.
Does his recent struggles in the tournament, does that carry over, you think, with Arkansas this year going up against Kansas?
Well, he has a very similar team, right? It's a loaded team in terms of talent, but maybe not a perfectly constructed team that has been very up and down throughout the course of the year. I feel the same way about Kansas, though. So it's 2 teams that are kind of identical to each other in that regard. A lot of talent, maybe not great basketball teams. You sort of feel like one of them may have the ability to catch fire and maybe make some damage in here, but the other one is probably going to finish their season exactly like the course of the season has been. To me, for Arkansas, the question, guys, is what is Boogie Flan's impact? It sounds like he's back and ready to go. They sort of caught their stride when he went out. So can they integrate him back in seamlessly and actually get better with that? Does he take away from what they do? That's a really interesting question to me.
I love how much John Calipari and Rick Pitino hate each other. I love it. I love it. I love that they don't even try to act like they're friends. I love the fact that they are so petty with one another. I love that they go on social media, kind of taking off to the side jabs at one another, especially Pitino being like, make sure Cal gets a raucous ovation when he comes back to Rupp Arena as both former Kentucky head basketball coaches. I need that Arkansas-St. John's matchup in the second round like I need air, Steve.
When's the last time they played each other?
Ooh.
I mean, one would have been at Louisville, the other one would have been in Kentucky.
That's got to be the last time, in the last several years.
That's been almost 10 years ago at this point.
That's true. So it would be awesome to see. No question about it. The TV ratings would be there. Buck, I know you don't think Indiana should have gotten in, but you brought up Bubba Cunningham and North Carolina. I give myself 24 hours after selection show. It's like a big win or a big loss in the NFL. You get 24 hours to wash it out, and then you have to move on and just enjoy the tournament. But, man, this was a bad job by the committee. I think they overvalued way too many things. They weren't consistent throughout the field. And I thought seeding was going to be hard because of the disparity of the opportunities for teams like Texas and North Carolina versus anybody else in an at-large field. But at some point, you got to win those games. Texas below 500 overall. North Carolina 1-12 against Quad 1. Indiana at least won 4 games against Quad 1. I know you don't think your Hoosiers deserve in. I think they deserve in over North Carolina. And how about this? Boise State has more wins against ACC tournament teams this year than North Carolina has wins against ACC tournament teams this year. Boise State is not in the ACC.
Yeah.
North Carolina is. That's crazy.
I agree that they Indiana specifically deserved to get in based on the criteria that I saw of teams that did get in. The only reason that I'm anti-Indiana in the tournament is because I don't want to watch them and they make my life a living hell. And I would like for Mike Woodson to just do his old man shuffle off into the sunset and me never have to look at him again. But it is infuriating. If I was still hugely invested in this year's team the way that I usually am, I would be seething with the committee because I don't understand. I don't understand how you can sit up there as Bubba Cunningham, say, well, I wasn't in the room. Of course, it had no impact. When you've been talking about these things amongst yourselves as a committee for weeks and weeks and weeks, and do not sit there and tell me that something that you have said or done throughout the course of that as the athletic director of one of these teams or programs in question didn't have some level of influence, even just indirectly, on the rest of the committee that's responsible for putting together the field. It's garbage.
Get basketball people in the room.
Please.
It's nothing against athletic directors, but Bubba Cunningham has an important job running the University of North Carolina's athletic department and making sure Bill Belichick follows the rules right now. You think he's out there watching Wofford and Bryant and Colorado State and Boise State as much as he needs to be to do that job effectively? I mean, give me Ron Slay and Jay Billis and Casey Jacobson and Robbie Hummel and those people in the room. Those people live and breathe this sport, and I guarantee you they would give you a better representation of what the top 68 teams should be in a bracket like this. And I just hate the job. And by the way, I hate what they said afterwards, but it's because they did a bad job. So then you're trying to explain away your decisions with nothing. West Virginia, the explanation was that Tucker DeVries has been hurt. Tucker DeVries is a good player. He got hurt in November. They played 23 of their 32 or 3 games without Tucker DeVries. They won at Kansas. They went 13-10 in that time. You know who didn't go 13-10 in that time? Texas. You know who didn't go 13? I mean, it's a bad explanation of what's going on, and it's because they did a bad job with the seeding process. So they've got to change it. But until they do, I love the tournament the way it is. I loved it even more at 64 probably. But I'm actually getting to the point to say, let's get it out to 72 or 76, add a few more games to Tuesday and Wednesday, and at least put Boise and West Virginia in there. If we're going to have the field so screwed up on the back end, at least give those teams the opportunity to play themselves into Thursday.
I agree with every one of those people that you just mentioned that should be on the committee, except for Robbie Hummel. Bleep him. Steve Lehman, News Channel 5, here with us. Yes, because he went to Purdue. Actually, wonderful guy, does a great job on the Big Ten Network, but bleep him. Steve Lehman, News Channel 5, here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
Bubba Cunningham, nice little bonus, too, for North Carolina making the tournament.
Also bleep him.
Where are you at on Tennessee right now as a 2 seed in the same bracket as your alma mater, Illinois?
Yep. I really like Tennessee. I was telling Buck yesterday, I have less concern about what I'm getting with this year's Tennessee team than I can remember in recent years. I think they're a little bit more consistent offensively. They're still terrific defensively. I think they could win the national championship, and they certainly could get to a Final Four. I have some pause in the sense that I already mentioned that the top 4 seeds, including Houston, are historically good metrically. Houston in particular is just as good as Tennessee defensively. and Kelvin Sampson's best offensive team. So at best, if you get to the Elite Eight, you're probably running into that and would have to have a great effort to get through them. So that's a problem. But also, I look at that Sweet 16 matchup. I think they handle Wofford no problem. And I think it's a great matchup against UCLA because Mick Cronin wants them to be muddy and all that. And I think Tennessee's great in muddy type of games. Nobody's going to out-mud them physically. So I think Tennessee moves on there. Utah State runs a funky zone, but people have kind of figured that out. So I think Tennessee would be fine. But that Sweet 16 game gets interesting. I mean, one, if Kentucky's right, they beat Tennessee twice this year, and I thought handled pretty much both of those games. So if they face a right Kentucky team with maybe a little bit more healthy Butler in week 2, that's going to be a difficult challenge. And even if it's Illinois, obviously that game happened earlier in the year too, and Tennessee survived. But Illinois, again, it's such a up or down team. Illinois made no shots in that game, which credit to Tennessee. That defense can do that. But Illinois has the potential. I mean, Illinois won at a top 10 team by 32 earlier this year. They own like the Big Ten record for wins by 20 plus in the season. Now, they also have been beaten by 43 by Duke and multiple other 20-point losses over the course of the year. So they are either really, really good or really, really bad. That would freak me out too if I was Tennessee because Illinois' best outscores Tennessee in a neutral gym.
It's just going to be Tennessee-Purdue in the Elite Eight. All roads lead to Tennessee-Purdue in the NCAA
Which is
tournament.
a sneaky basketball rivalry now, which delights me because I can still hate Purdue regardless of who I'm rooting for.
I actually am very down on Purdue.
Yeah, a 4
Why
seed.
are they a 4 seed?
They're playing High Point.
Which will be a trendy upset pick. High Point's really good. I think that particular matchup isn't good because Trey Kaufman-Wren and Braden Smith are elite in the two-man pick-and-roll game, and I don't think a mid-major is going to be able to stop that. But as you get further on in the tournament, certainly Houston, I mean, they're going to eat that alive. So I don't think Purdue has a deep run in it, but Matt Painter is a very, very good coach, and those two players at the top are All-Americans.
Do you have a favorite 12-5 upset pick?
It's probably UC San Diego, Michigan. I think you got to be careful with the Wolverines. They had been really bad down the stretch of the season. Now, they were really good this weekend, but they were not good down the stretch of the season. They are turnover prone, and they're going to come off the emotional gauntlet of winning the Big Ten and getting done at like 4:45, being on the court, cutting down the nets as they hear their name called. Yeah. And now they have to play on Thursday, so quick turnaround Thursday in Denver. They get shipped out west at altitude against a team that won 30 games and forces a lot of turnovers. To me, if you're looking at one, that's probably the 12/5 I'd most be curious about.
It still made me sick to watch them win the Big Ten. I wanted Dusty May to be my basketball coach so badly. It just
I understand. He's a very good coach.
The disrespect for a program legend like Mike Woodson.
Bleep that guy, too. Steve Lehman of News Channel 5 has been kind enough to hang out with us. Best Belmont sideline reporter this year, and why was it me?
Oh, I forgot to ask Casey to grade you.
Grade my post-game questions?
Yeah.
Well, if
I only got one crack at it, so I didn't have too many opportunities.
Well, if I remember correctly, Buck, and this may be partly our fault, we maybe didn't explain it well, but I think Buck forgot to do the halftime interview, at least initially, and so we had to like track it down in there. Yeah. So some growing pains there, but I thought you handled yourself very well. You're like Evan Washburn Jr. in terms of the male sideline reporters.
Evan's got better hair. That's my.
Evan has better hair than everybody.
It's consistent.
Yeah, it's because he does it with concrete. It doesn't move. It's like Marty Smith. Thanks for coming in, Steve.
You bet, guys. Thanks.
All right, we'll update some polls. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, 615-737-1045, the number. I'm Buck Rising. It's 1045 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, 615-737-1045, the number. All right. Tell me why there is a story in the rundown that says only Cheyenne's Cherokee Adventure. That sounds like a water park ride at Nashville Shores, which would be fitting because Robert Walsh is on the other side of the story. What do you have to tell the audience that couldn't be bothered to tell me last night on primetime? So good that you had to safeguard it for the radio show.
So I went to Cherokee this weekend to see my mom. She was going to the Casey and the Sunshine Band concert on Friday and was like, hey, I got enough points. I can get you guys a room if you want to come up here, hang out with us, gamble a little bit. I was like, sure, why not? So I invited Cheyenne because if I would have left her at home, she probably would have spent more money there than at a casino. So I brought her with me. And as we're there, I don't know if you guys have ever been to the casino with like your granny or your aunt, your uncle, your mama, any of your elder women in your family. They don't go play roulette, blackjack, craps. They don't play the same things that you and your buddies would play. They play slots, which I'm unfamiliar with. It takes zero skill. I like having at least a small hand in whether I win or lose any money.
I still don't understand how to play craps. I've watched 1,000 times. I've tried to play. I feel like I'm just stupid.
Craps is a soul vibes game. As long as you got good vibes and you just play the come line. As long as you play the come line, you'll be okay. That's neither here nor there because the whole weekend I'm playing slots with my mom. And my mom, my aunt, they do this all the time. So they're used to just sitting there, hitting a button, talking crap about watching people all around them. Well, Cheyenne, she has this dumb-ass luck. No matter what we're doing, say she's playing blackjack and she gets dealt a 16 and the dealer has a 7. It's like, I probably don't want to hit, but I have to because if they have a face card, I lose. Well, Cheyenne would buck the natural trend and just say, I'll sit, and they would bust. That's her kind of luck. She can win on any of these gambling games. So I'm in there, sitting there, and I am hemorrhaging money. When I say hemorrhaging money, I mean I pulled out like $300 just to play with, and Cheyenne comes and she's like, I have $100, but I don't want to put that whole thing in there. Can I have a 20? This happens like 3 or 4 times. Can I have a 20? Finally, we're in the smoking room where I can just let some of my frustration out, smoke a cig, watch Howie Mandel on Deal or No Deal. And what happens is I hear Cheyenne go, oh. And usually she is not one who has lost her words. And I look over and her machine is making the most god-awful noise. The buzzers are going off. People are pulling their cell phones out. And I look over there and she had hit the jackpot on this machine.
No.
Unfortunately, yes. She won more money than I would like to say out loud. Let me just say that. She won more money than I would like to admit publicly that she won. So much so that the casino people come over and they're like, ma'am, can you sign this? I need your social security number. We're going to have to sign you up for this.
What?
So I did not hear the end of it. My initial investment of $300, which was all sunken, by the way. I didn't win anything all weekend. It's supposed to be my trip. It's my mom. It's my free room. But Cheyenne leaves with more money than I make in probably 2 or 3 months at this job. So we get back to the room. Believe me, I'm seething because I've done nothing but lose money all day and I'm hanging out with my mom. I can't get like blackout. I can't be like, give me a double tequila and soda, slap it on down.
Oh, see, that's what I would have got. I would have gotten hammered.
I can't do it. I can't because my mom's going to be like, can you not act right one time? One time I take you out, you want to act like this? So we get back to the room and Cheyenne's like, oh, by the way, I remembered you gave me that money. I wanted to give you something. And careful,
FCC.
This turd hands me back $40. And it was like, I want to give you back your initial investment on that money.
Nobody has ever deserved to be disparaged more by their significant other than you.
I am so upset because now she thinks she's the queen of the slots. She thinks that she could not lose. Every time I turn around, that wasn't the only money she made, by the way. Turn around, she's randomly playing some. And slots are so annoying because each of them are like these random games. She's like, oh, I want to play this one. Why? I don't know. I just want to. Sit down. $400. Ching, 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 ching. Just pooping out money all over the place. I sit down somewhere. Shwink. Take my $1. Shoink. My mom comes up. Do you need some money, honey? No. I'm a 32-year-old man. I don't need any money. I would like my girlfriend to give me some money. She's like, if I'm up, you're up. But I'll tell you one thing. I don't know where she hid the money because I looked for it all last night. She went to bed at 8:30. Can't find a red cent of this money, and it's all because of me. So I better be getting a dadgum hot tub, a sauna, a foot massage. I need something for my troubles.
You're
all the things Buck won't buy you.
Well, no, I offered to take him with me to get a pedicure. I'm not.
I want you to rub my feet.
I'm not going to rub my feet.
How much money? Because I know how much Cheyenne has. How much money would it take you to rub my feet?
There is not a dollar amount in the world that could be paid to me that would get me to get near your feet.
That's not true. Everyone could be bought.
That's not true.
What's your dollar, Lucas?
Oh, whatever Cheyenne won. Just give me that.
Straight?
I love that she just slipped you $40 and just said, for your troubles,
because
appreciate your contribution.
You would not have even done that for her if she was on the other side of this transaction.
Okay, let's be honest.
The valet that she was tipping.
Oh, she tipped him more than she gave me. You should have seen the waiter's face when he looked open and saw the tip she gave him. But no, that's the problem. If I win money, it's we money. If she wins money, it's she money. I don't get any of it. I see none of it. I buy the groceries. I'm the man. You know what I mean? Give me some money. Give me some money. I just want a little, I feel like Mr. Krabs, money. Give me just a little bit. Can I have $100? Can I have something for me?
I'm the man is exactly why you don't deserve any money. All right? Is she not the primary breadwinner in the household anyway?
Now she is.
Yeah, 100%.
She's been there.
She's already outsourced me for 3 months. We worked 3 long months this year in Cheyenne's.
What is she outsourced?
To the slots. Now she's just reinvesting in it. I don't know. She's talking about, we've got a trip to go back home in a couple months. She's like, why don't we just stay at Cherokee on the way in and we'll go there the next day? I'm like, no, what, so you could steal more of my money and win more money that I can't use?
I'm the man. Give me some money. Needs to be a drop.
I ain't doing it.
Do we even have time for polls?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. How many SEC teams will make it to the Sweet 16? 14 are in the field. The max amount that could make it is 9 because of the amount of potential SEC on SEC second round matchups. Setting the over-under at 6.5. 66.5% take the under.
I take the under.
Yeah.
Randomness in the tournament, it's a really tough thing. Even if it is the best tournament or the best conference in college basketball, it would be tough for me to see 7 teams advancing.
When will Aaron Rodgers make his decision? Pre-draft or post-draft? 51.3%. It's close, but narrow edge to post-draft.
I want it so badly to be post-draft. That would be hilarious to me.
I bet it'll come down before the draft. What position do you want the Titans to address in free agency more before the draft? Wide receiver or edge? 54.6% say edge.
Not in this market.
There's better receivers that can help you than edge rushers out there now, but you certainly need both. And what would constitute success for the Vols in the NCAA tournament? Sweet 16, Elite 8, or is it Final Four or bust? And that's where the majority of the votes are. 50.4% say Final Four or bust. 40.8% say it's the Elite 8. 8.8% say Sweet 16.
If you're being realistic, it's the Elite 8. I would not expect a worse team to advance further into the tournament than last year's Tennessee team. And worse by degrees, right? More well-rounded, but not a better basketball team.
Elite 8, I think, should be the baseline here in terms of the conversation of success. Those are the polls.
That's the show. Primetime tonight at 7 p.m. We'll look forward to diving into more Titans topics there with you at 7 p.m. on the A to Z Sports streaming network. Fill out your brackets. Check out 3HL tomorrow. Blaine and Zach next.